If you're here, you will agree that for the sake of our province, Danielle Smith needs to be defeated. In so many ways and on so many levels, she's a threat to our future. But before we can defeat her, we have to understand why we lost to her. And put simply, the UCP beat us because we failed to attract the support of enough ordinary working Albertans. We won among university-educated middle-class voters, but we lost among working-class voters with high school, college, and trades education. This is not unique to Alberta. It's the same thing that's happening with Pierre Poilievre at the national level and Donald Trump in the United States. They're taking legitimate worker anxiety and turning it into anger for their own political purposes. Under Rachel Notley's leadership, we New Democrats built an impressive coalition, but that coalition has a hole in it. Workers are the missing piece. I threw my hat into the ring to become the next NDP leader here in Alberta because as the president of Alberta's largest worker organization, the Alberta Federation of Labour, I think I know how to bring more working Albertans over to the NDP. We have to offer hope instead of anger. We have to provide solutions instead of scapegoats. And most importantly, it's not enough for us to tell working Albertans that the NDP is the real workers' party. We have to show them. 2 weeks ago, I said the first thing we need to do to win more worker support is to have a clear plan for the economy. In particular, I said we need to embrace Biden and Lougheed-style government-led industrial policy to pivot our economy towards the future. Working Albertans know that change is coming, and they know that it's better to plan for that change than stick our heads in the sand and be left behind. We need to be the party with a plan to manage change in the economy. We need to be the party with an economic roadmap to ensure our continued prosperity in a changing world. That's the first strategy to win workers back to the NDP and away from the UCP. We need to fill the missing piece in our coalition so that we can win the election in 2027. Last week, I added a second plank to my platform aimed at bringing workers back to the NDP. Put simply, I said we have to commit to giving all Alberta workers a raise. The UCP is the party of wage stagnation and wage suppression. The NDP has to become the party of wage growth. Today, I'm unveiling the third plank in my platform. If we want to win over working class Albertans, in addition to becoming the party of wage growth, we also have to become the party of affordability. The cost of living in Alberta has been skyrocketing. Alberta currently has the highest inflation rate in the country and the slowest wage growth. Rent, mortgage payments, groceries, gas at the pumps, power, insurance, school fees, municipal taxes, you name it, it all costs a lot more today than it did 3 years ago. A growing number of Albertans are worried that they might fall out of the middle class if something doesn't change, and most working class and lower wage Albertans are starting to think they'll never make it into the middle class at all. People are worried about themselves, they're also worried about their children and grandchildren. In particular, they worry that young Albertans will never be able to afford their own homes. But it's not just individuals and families who are hurting. When people face higher costs, they have less discretionary income. And when they have less discretionary income, they spend less in the local economy. That's what's happening in Alberta right now. Cash-strapped Albertans are spending less on restaurants, clothes, consumer goods, entertainment, cars, basically everything else. The result is that the economic pain is being felt both on the home front and on the business front. The rising cost of living is being felt by all Albertans, but some are being hurt more than others. For example, middle-class Albertans, for them, the problem is less discretionary spending. But for working class and low-income Albertans, the pain is more fundamental. They're literally wondering if they'll be able to put food on their tables and keep a roof over their heads. If we New Democrats hope to win the support of working Albertans, the working Albertans we need to defeat the UCP in 2027, then we need to present a credible and compelling plan to tackle the affordability crisis. There should be no higher political or policy priority. So how do we fix things? The first step to fixing the problem is to understand its causes. Some cynical players on the political stage have been offering overly simplistic prescriptions. For example, federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has blamed it all on the carbon tax. If only it were that simple. The truth is that the spike in the cost of living has roots at the international, national, and provincial levels, and it also has a lot to do with the choices and behaviors of large corporations. Here's a quick summary of how we got here, why it's worse here in Alberta than in other provinces, and what we need to do to get things under control. The roots of the current inflation crisis can be found in supply shocks related to the pandemic and the war in Ukraine. But things got much worse when big corporations decided to use these shocks as a pretext to increase their profits by raising prices and gouging consumers. The biggest culprits were oil companies that price gouged us at the pumps and grocery chains that price gouged us at their checkout stands. The federal government made things worse by allowing far too many non-permanent residents into Canada, which drove up housing prices and suppressed wages, and by refusing to do anything to address the price gouging by corporations. The Bank of Canada piled on by increasing interest rates, which squeezed people with higher mortgage payments. And then there's the UCP government here in Alberta. They are the reason inflation is higher here than in any other province. We're the only province in Canada with a deregulated and privatized power market. That has allowed utility companies to jack up prices by 128% last year. The UCP turned a blind eye. We're the only Western province with a privatized and deregulated system for auto insurance. The result is that Albertans pay hundreds of dollars more each year for insurance than other Canadians. The UCP has done nothing to address this problem either. The UCP also made things worse on the housing front because we're one of the only Canadian provinces without rent controls, and because they spent millions of dollars, our tax dollars, on their harebrained Alberta is Calling campaign aimed at encouraging thousands and thousands of other Canadians to move to Alberta without doing anything to ensure that all of these newcomers had a place to live when they got here. We now have the fastest rising rents for apartments in the country, and rents in Calgary are now almost on par with rents in Toronto. So much for the Alberta advantage. All of this is causing an unprecedented amount of distress among Albertans, especially working class Albertans. If we want to win them over and win the next election, we have to come to their rescue. The plan I'm releasing today does just that. As Premier, I would bring housing costs down with rent controls, emergency rent supplements, and an unprecedented plan to build more affordable housing, including the creation of an Alberta Housing Corporation. As Premier, I would bring power and insurance rates down by bringing in public auto insurance and regulated public power like other provinces. And as Premier, I would bring down grocery and fuel prices by introducing an excess profits penalty on big corporations to discourage price gouging. I would also introduce price controls to reduce the price of core food items like milk, eggs, bread, meat, fruit, and vegetables. The bottom line is that Albertans are drowning. The government is supposed to be there to throw them a lifeline, but the UCP keeps throwing them anchors instead. Under my leadership, the NDP will become the ally that Albertans need in these troubled times. We will win their support and win the next election by becoming the party of affordability. Please check out my website, gilforalberta.ca, for the full details of my affordability platform. What you'll see is good policy for Alberta families and good politics that will help us attract working class votes that we need to win the next election. Thanks, and right now I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
No, I'm here.
Oh, good.
Hi, Jean.
My question, Gil, is I'm from Calgary, South Calgary riding.
Hi, Jean.
Hi, nice to meet you the other day. Gil, I'm concerned about how we can get out more of the left-leaning vote in Calgary Shaw. We're a strongly conservative riding, and we need more advice.
Well, I'm not too familiar with the demographics of your riding, though I do remember meeting you the other day, and thank you for hosting us. but I think regardless of where you live in the province, the problem is the same. We've built a very impressive coalition among middle-class Albertans, which represent about 40% of the population. We do really well with people with university educations, but the polling shows us that we're falling behind and losing to the UCP among Albertans who describe themselves as working class and who have college, high school, and trades education. And as I've said on many occasions over the last few weeks, they are the missing piece in the winning coalition that we need to build to defeat the UCP in 2027. So I think that the path is clear. If we want to win in 2027 and beyond, we have to find a way to appeal to working class Albertans. And what I've been saying in my campaign is that the way to do that is to become the party of wage growth, the party of affordability, and the party with a plan to pivot our economy towards new opportunities as the global economy changes. So, in the past, I think we've been the party of education, we've been the party of healthcare, we've been the party of human rights, and that really resonates with a lot of Albertans, especially those who are a little bit more comfortable and don't have to worry about putting food on their table and keeping a roof over their head. That's we do have a strong base, but in people of higher incomes. But in order to fill that missing piece, we have to make an offer to working people who are struggling. And so that's why I'm saying that we have to become the party of wage growth. So we have to commit to introducing policies that will help Albertans get the raises that they deserve. We need to be the party that has a strategy for affordability. That's the plank that I've released today. And we also have to have a plan to make sure that Albertans can keep working and maintain their prosperity even as the global economy changes. Those three things, if we become the party with a plan for the economy, if we become the party of affordability and the party of wage growth, those three things together with our strong foundation, being the party for education and healthcare and human rights, you put all those things together, and that's how we, add the more, economically precarious Albertans, people who are really worried about meat and potato kitchen table issues. That's how we add them to the coalition, and I think that will help us win in Calgary-Shaw, but I think it will help us win in every constituency across this province. I hope that answers your question, Gene.
Thanks, Gil. I have somebody with a hand up who's showing up as iPhones written. I'm going to allow you to speak, but can you just identify yourself, though?
Hi, my name is Erin. I just actually had a question. I'm wondering how much would that save Albertans in their tax, like the taxes going towards paying? How much would it save if all these things were actually implemented? Or would it cost us more in taxes?
Well, I actually think that the affordability platform that I've rolled out today has the potential to save working Albertan families literally thousands of dollars every year. So for example, if we were to introduce public auto insurance as opposed to the current privatized system, all drivers in Alberta would be paying hundreds of dollars less every year than they do right now. And if they owned multiple vehicles in their family, it might be thousands of dollars. And these are not numbers just pulled out of the air. All we have to do is compare premiums that are paid by drivers here in Alberta to premiums that are paid in neighboring provinces that have public auto insurance, so Saskatchewan, BC, but also Manitoba here in the West. It's not just a marginal difference, it's a substantial difference between the premiums in provinces that have public auto insurance versus those that don't. On that front, I would point out that one of the other candidates for leadership, Kathleen Ganley, has suggested introducing a public option for auto insurance as opposed to full public auto insurance that we have in the other three Western provinces. I would suggest that that would not bring prices down as much as my proposal for full public auto insurance, because the way that the other provinces have been able to bring prices down so much is by basically having one big public auto insurer that provides economies of scale. So my proposal is full public auto insurance like they have in the other Western provinces, not just a public option. So that's just one example of the things that I'm proposing today. But if you look at all the other things that I'm proposing, it could be thousands of dollars less. So for example, public power and regulated power, like our power rates here in Alberta under our privatized and deregulated system, power rates have gone up 128% over the last couple of years. And so we don't just have the highest power rates in the country by a little bit, they're dramatically higher. So moving to a regulated system like they have in other provinces and like we had here in Alberta before 2001 could save every Alberta household, again, hundreds of dollars. So hundreds of dollars saved on auto insurance, hundreds of dollars saved every year on public power, and then if we're successful in bringing the price of housing down through things like rent control and emergency rent supplements, and I'm also the only one offering to introduce a Alberta Housing Corporation that would supplement the construction of new units that are being built by the private sector, but we would move into housing in a big way using the Alberta Housing Corporation to build a lot more lots and a lot more housing units especially on public land. And I think that that's exactly what's needed to help bring housing prices down. There's quite a lot of other things there. The final thing I'll mention is municipal taxes. And I didn't mention that in my opening remarks, but it is in the plan that's on the website. I think a lot of people are noticing that their municipal taxes have been going up a lot. One of the reasons that's happened is because the UCP has cut transfers for municipal infrastructure by about 2/3. So they're less than a third of what they were in the last year of the NDP government in 2018. And this is at the same time that we have this huge influx of population. So there's more people, more demands, but less money for municipal infrastructure. So municipalities, whether it's big cities like Edmonton or Calgary or smaller communities around the province, they've been left with this big hole in their budgets, and they've been forced to increase municipal taxes. So if I were Premier, I would restore the grants from the province to the municipalities, so so they wouldn't have to increase their municipal taxes. So if you add it all up, I think that the package that I've put on the table today would save Alberta families literally thousands of dollars every year in costs, and that's what I mean when I say that the NDP should be the affordability party. With this plan, I'm putting our money where our mouth is, and not just saying that we're going to bring down costs for working families, but showing exactly how we would do it.
Thanks, Gil. And I see Karen has a question for you, Gil. Go ahead, Karen. Unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay. Hi, Gil. Thank you so much. One of my big concerns are the UCP has 4 years in which to absolutely trash Alberta. And I'm wondering about any suggestions that we may be able to start taking action on to mitigate the damage that they're doing. I have this horrendous feeling that Alberta is broke just from the behavior of the UCP. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the question, Karen. I'll answer in 2 ways. First, I want to make it clear that Alberta is not broke or broken. We still have a strong economy. We have wonderful citizens, wonderful workers, wonderful entrepreneurs and business people. We have all the building blocks for success and prosperity. But you're right, the UCP is standing in the way. And there's a disconnect between the vibrancy and potential that we have in our economy and in our communities and and the impoverishment of that we're seeing within the government and in public services. As a community, I mean, we're still, by almost any measure, we're still one of the wealthiest jurisdictions, not just in Canada, but indeed in the world. And there's absolutely no reason why things should be falling apart the way they are in terms of our public services. That's a choice that's being made by the UCP. And different choices can and should be made. And that's one of the reasons I'm running, because I think that in a place as wealthy and prosperous as Alberta, there's no reason why we should see such impoverishment in our education, healthcare, and other public services. So there's a disconnect that needs to be fixed. In terms of the damage that the UCP can do over the next 3 years of their term before the next provincial election, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's hard to believe how much damage they've been able to do, and it hasn't even been a year since the last election. And I know that they have plans to make things even worse. So if I were to be chosen as leader of the NDP, I would look for ways to end the term of this UCP government before the next provincial election. And there are some options that are worth exploring. And so in particular here in Alberta, we do have provincial recall legislation that if you were able to mobilize enough citizens in certain ridings, you can recall MLAs. And the UCP only has a 6-seat advantage right now, 6 out of 87. It's not insignificant, but it's also not insurmountable. So my team is looking at this right now to see what the prospects are for the potential for recall elections to bring this government down before the end of its term. And I commit to you that we will look at it, and if there are options and opportunities, if I were a leader, I would pursue those opportunities. Having said that, though, the legislation is pretty tough. It sets a pretty high bar for recall, and so I don't want to get people's hopes up unrealistically. But it's a tool that's available to us, and the final thing I'll say is that it's a tool that only can be used by individual citizens. So parties can't initiate a recall petition. It would have to come from individuals, but if there were individuals in target ridings that initiated recall campaigns against UCP MLAs, we would, if under my leadership, we would support that. But it, once again, would have to come from individual constituents in those target ridings. But you raise really important points. I take them very seriously, and the stakes are very high. The damage that the UCP is already doing to our province is very serious, and I agree with you that I'm worried that over the next 3 years they could do a lot worse. And so if there's any way for us to stop that and trigger an early election so Albertans can actually save our province, I'd be all in favor of that. But thank you very much for the question.
Hi there. I just had a question. So you're talking about building more units. You didn't specify if those units would be like regular market housing units, or if you want to make like more affordable or subsidized units, or a mixture of both. So I wanted to just see if you had more on that.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Sydney. And yes, we do have more on that. And yes, my priority as Premier would be to build more non-market housing, and because that's the problem. The market right now is pricing both rental housing and housing for individual purchase at rates that are out of reach for a growing number of Albertans. And so in my mind, the role of government in a situation like this, which is becoming a crisis, is to use the tools of government to provide access to housing at rates that are below market. And so what I would advocate doing is doing things like building on public land, and because all 3 levels of government have land, significant amounts of land that they own. So the federal government has already made it clear that they're very interested in using their federal lands to leverage housing construction. The municipal governments are doing the same, but under the UCP, we've heard very little from the provincial government. So if I were premier and leading a NDP government, we would take available public land. And I want to make it clear that instead of selling it to developers, my preference would actually be to keep the land as public land and then lease it to help bring down the land costs. And a big chunk of the cost of construction of any new housing property is the land cost. And there are all sorts of models from around the world, including places like Singapore, a lot of Western European countries, even right here in Canada, the Indigenous communities in Vancouver, for example, the Musqueam, they have a long track record of building all sorts of dense housing developments. They're doing it right now, but on land that they continue to own, and then they lease it back, and so lease it to the people who live there. So instead of buying it, you're leasing it. The costs are much lower. I also think we've lost our way as a country in terms of supporting cooperative housing. There was a time in the 70s and early 80s when literally tens of thousands of cooperative housing units were built, here in Alberta and in other places across the country. That has to be part of the housing solution. So I 100% agree that we need to increase density, we need to build more, and we need to build more housing, both for rental and for purchase, that is below market. And only the government can do that, and that's why I'm suggesting the establishment of an Alberta Housing Corporation. I would also suggest that the Alberta Housing Corporation, in addition to using public land, and that we actually hire a permanent core of tradespeople to build and also to maintain properties. I'm also suggesting that we use the Alberta Housing Corporation to partner with business to create a home manufacturing business, so like factory manufactured homes here in Alberta to help bring costs down, because economies of scale, that kind of thing, to turn things out more quickly. And so we could, not only help, bring costs down, build more units, but we could also help create a new industry here in Alberta of manufactured homes, and that could actually employ a lot of Albertans as well. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, Tom, just on the housing front, I just want to add one thing, well, a couple of things. The first is that I'm a real strong believer that the best solutions usually come from people who are closest to the problem. And when it comes to housing, the level of government that is closest to the problem is the municipal level of government. And I've got to say, as an Albertan, I'm very proud of the work that is being done by our municipal governments, both in the two big cities, Calgary and Edmonton, but also in the smaller communities and smaller cities around the province. Our municipal politicians are really taking the bull by the horns on this issue, and they have all sorts of creative ideas. But unfortunately, we currently have a provincial government led by Daniel Smith who doesn't want to let our elected officials at the municipal level proceed with their innovative ideas, and instead she wants to throw a wet blanket on them. So I just want to make it really clear that if I were premier, I would support municipalities in the work that they're doing to build and generate more affordable housing in their communities. So instead of getting in the way of them by trying to undermine their independence, I would support them both politically and financially. And then also the federal government is doing some incredible work over the last 6 months, especially with their housing initiatives. And I would get out of their way too. So if the municipalities want to cooperate with the federal government to help address the affordable housing situation in this province, instead of being an impediment, I would be a supporter. And I think that, especially given that the federal government is putting billions of dollars on the table for affordable housing right now, it just doesn't make any sense for the provincial government to be getting in the way of the federal and provincial and municipal governments working together, especially when you consider that most of that money that's coming from the federal government is actually our tax dollars, and it's just ridiculous in my mind for the provincial government to be getting in the way of our own tax dollars coming back to our communities to help address the housing affordability crisis. Okay, well, thanks everyone.